Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships. Today we're going to be going over a development blog. It's a closed test for update 14.7, being aircraft carrier changes and survivability improvements. So note, this is only a development blog. It doesn't mean what you see here will go final through into the game, but like 95% of the time it does. So let's see. They've been really dragging their feet, in my opinion, on making aircraft carrier changes. I mean, the changes are ongoing in the 5 years that I have been playing the game, so let's see what they did. So this update is one of the steps in larger changes of aircraft carriers and related aviation mechanics, which is focused on resolving core issues. Our testing and fine-tuning are ongoing to ensure we deliver an improved gameplay experience. However, while many changes are still in development, we'd like to implement some of the already prepared tweaks, quality of life features, and improvements on the live servers now before the next closed testing. Look out for additional devlogs later this summer, diving deeper into further changes currently in development. Okay, two things I want to say here real quick. Let's see. So there are many changes are still in development, so there's still more coming. This isn't the end. The second thing that they also say here is that they're giving themselves a timeline. So like later this summer. So I would assume either this is going to be in July, late July, or August. I'm going to guess August, because really if they go into September, aren't we getting into fall by then? So, okay, so more changes coming. Maybe by August we hear more. Changes to aircraft carriers and aviation. A key goal of this update is to optimize aerial spotting and visibility mechanics. Okay, making them more intuitive and consistent across various gameplay scenarios. Changes made. On-fire detectability reduced. Ships on fire will now have their aero detectability increased by 2 kilometers, down from 3 kilometers. Make it the same as surface detectability increase on fire. Decrease. Detectability increased by 2 kilometers. Okay. Unified aircraft spotting range. A standard detectability range of 10 kilometers has been applied to all player-controlled and non-player-controlled aircraft, except for jet airplanes. Okay, it's nice, but that says standard, so I'm guessing you can get planes even more concealed. I think, didn't you have issues around that with like Hakuryu? Aerial detectability penalty for firing removed. Firing main battery guns no longer increases the ship's aerial detectability. Well, thank goodness. Because it's annoying. Like, you know, sometimes you would be like, okay, I'm not going to fire my main guns because there's a CV nearby and I don't want the planes to spot me. At least I play like that sometimes. All aircraft carriers with secondary batteries will now feature manual control secondaries, adding an extra layer of defensive capability. They use the same system introduced with German heavy cruisers, meaning secondaries under manual control will receive adjustments to range, accuracy, and reload parameters. Players will maintain the ability to designate specific targets for their carrier's secondary while not under manual control. So this is something like actually they wanted in the game for a long time, a lot of us have. Or like, let's say you're sailing in Massachusetts and you could take manual control of your secondary battery. And there was I don't think wargaming was ever really consistent on that, besides you just like clicking a ship and letting your secondaries do the work. But now aircraft carriers. You know, let's think about this for a moment, actually, because it's really, I don't know what to think. Aircraft carriers got manual secondary battery control before battleships did. Let that sink in. So this aircraft carrier player, he's not flying any planes. You don't see any planes on the map. He's switched to this. Pressing the 4 key takes him into this secondary battery manual control. So he's the one aiming, tracking the lightning here, and shooting it. Aircraft carriers got this before battleships. Let that sink in. You know why they did this? One of the reasons they've done this is because I feel like this was a big slap in the face. Because, you know, okay, this aircraft carrier is like, you know, they're controlling it, they're trying to show off the futures, so they're YOLOing with it, basically. Most aircraft carriers are back here on the IJ line, or they're parked behind this island, or maybe even this island, right? Or if you're an aircraft carrier over here, you're parked behind this island, or you're parked behind this island. That's basically how it goes if they're not just sitting exactly where they spawned. They got tired of destroyer players just running up on you and torping you. You know, and it's like, okay, I'm an aircraft carrier. Let's say your concealment is 11 kilometers and you're back here on B9. Why am I detected? It probably means the submarine or destroyer is pushing me because I can't see it, right? And then you would fly your planes around, you drop some fighters, you would adjust your movements, all those kinds of things. And now it's basically a wargaming protecting one of the most cherished classes in the game and their view. So now carriers will have their base and manual secondary battery ranges standardized, similar to surface ships. These ranges scale with tier and secondary battle type. So the days of simply just yelling your reward of catching a sleeping CV player off guard, this could be trouble. But honestly, how many carrier players are going to be in tuned with switching, letting their planes go and switching back to the manual secondary batteries? Probably the more skilled CV players will, but majority of the CV players, I don't know how much they're going to take advantage of this, so I have to keep that in mind. All right, so base secondary range goes from 4.5 to 8. Improved 4 to 7.5. Standard 3.5. Wait, what is this? Carriers will now have base and manual secondary battery ranges standardized. Wait, so you get different secondary ranges depending on what mode you're in? Because I think this is the 8 kilometer. What is this? A tier 10 midway? This could be like 10. Improved standard. I see. Oh, wait. A midway with 10.8 secondary range? What? So I got 10.8. So that means you can still take skills to buff it. Yeah, there's the let's go into ship build. Yeah, I can still do it this way. Midway. Let's see, is it this one? No, it's secondary battery reload time. There's one for secondary battery range, I thought. Unless I'm derping. Yeah, this one. Yeah, plus 20% on the secondary battery firing range. And right now, what are your secondaries? 5 kilometer? Just seeing what it would look like for funds. So now you could, if you went full art, you'd get 7.2, but this is without the changes taking into effect. Okay, so let me understand this right. So if I'm flying around in my planes, this is my secondary battery range. If I have manual control of my secondaries, this is my secondary battery range. Improved are the secondary battery type which have better range parameters than the standard, but are inferior to more signature ones based on German and French ships. An existing example of this is Shinano, which might be joined by more ships in the future. To ensure balanced performance, many carriers will receive adjustments to base secondary battery reload times and shell ballistics. These changes are aimed at improving damage per minute consistency and enabling comfortable use, even at longer engagement ranges, especially when fully built for secondaries. So this is something, this word Wargaming has used for a really long time around carriers, and is that they want carriers to be a comfortable experience for players, right? They've invested so much into this class. I think it's always Wargaming trying to get more people to play carriers, just like submarines. So that's a goal of theirs, is that carriers are comfortable for players to play. So So Langley, a lot of these actually, when I briefly looked through this, they're getting some big buffs. So you have your 4 tier 4 carriers here. Langley 7 to 2.5, Hosho 8 to 3. The Hermes, it's 102mm secondary battery shells change. They will become slightly flatter. I don't know how to pronounce this one. Ballistics on the 130 secondary battery shells change will become slightly floatier on both hulls. Ranger, 4.5, 3.5. The 127s will become, they change the shells, so now they'll be slightly flatter. That's basically a lot what they're doing. So normally, normal 127s, I think that's what Midway has, right? Am I right? Or am I wrong? Yeah, 127. I mean, normal secondary battery range, granted this lightning is only 1.7 away, you're going to have more of an arc. The shells are going to be more floatier. Now they've made it more flatter trajectory with the 127s. So now, depending on how you feel about it, right, because when you have these flatter shell arcs, it makes it more easier to aim. I don't know if they're going to change the shell velocity, but it makes it more comfortable in leading your target versus kind of your shell kind of arcing towards the target or whatever. So depending on how you feel about that, now your carrier's got a buff if you really are a fan of flatter shell arcs versus the more arcs that you have now with like 127s, or maybe I'm in a gearing, I'm sitting here and I want to shoot over this island. Then I would prefer that, right? I want floatier shells that have not such flat arcs. But if I'm in a DD gun engagement, I want the flatter shell ballistics. All right, Baron, whatever, 9 to 5.5. Aquila, 10.7 to 3.1. That is a massive buff. That's probably the biggest one of all these, maybe. Although Langley's looking pretty good. Yorktown, 6 to 3.1. Hornet and Azure Lane Hornet, 6 to 2.7. Enterprise, just flatter shell arcs. Grass Zeppelin, flatter shell arcs. Kaga, flatter shell arcs. Ryujo, Shikaku, flatter shell arcs. Essex, flatter shell arcs. UI improvements for secondary battery armament. And some coffee. Enhancements to in-port and in-battle tooltips further improve the experience of manually controlled secondaries for ships equipped with secondary armaments of multiple calibers. Tooltips will now display a unified segment showing common parameters such as secondary range in both automatic and manual firing modes, making it easier for players to assess performance at a glance. For ships with only a single secondary battery caliber, these stats will still appear in the standard section alongside other weapon characteristics. So let's take a look at this. So this is the secondary battery high explosive shell. So this is the same thing you're seeing here that this Midway player is using. So you see we have 150s, we have 128s, then we have the common parameters. So here you can see maximum range in manual mode, 9, maximum range in automatic mode, 8.3. We have 128s, what is this? Oh yeah, this is the, there's new German cruisers coming into the game, right, that have, or something that also going to have the manual controlled secondaries. I forgot about that. I've been in and out of it the last, I feel like month with World of Warships because I've been really busy in real life. So they're giving you an overview of how that looks like compared to the German cruisers coming into the game, something like that. Well, they got the 32mm pin threshold. 150s. So that's what it'll look like, just kind of that breakdown into the different calibers. Fire and damage control changes. Aircraft carriers will now experience more damaging and longer lasting fires, making sustained artillery engagements riskier. However, an improved damage control party will balance these adjustments. So this is weird to me. I'll read it through first and I'll explain why I think it feels weird. Fire duration increased from 5 seconds to 45 seconds. So now they've weakened in this parameter the survivability of an aircraft carrier So, you know, sometimes it'd be funny. Like, I'd kill a carrier. I've killed many carriers with just a 5-second fire time, but it's extremely difficult to do that. It's just playing the game for 5 years now. So the fires are going to last a heck of a lot longer. You know, maybe perhaps better matching historical accuracy, because it's not like aircraft carriers ever detonated. It's not like aircraft carriers ever burned fire out of control until it was consumed, the entire ship. Just reading a book about that in World War II the other day. Fire damage per second reduced. So 1 to 0.3%. So it'd be interesting to see how this actually looks. But basically, because, you know, it's not like they went from 5 to 15 seconds, right? If they had done that, then it would be the exact same, like a 15-second duration with 0.3% fire tick, right? If I'm doing math in my head right. So now, over long term, over 45 seconds, the fire will do more damage after you pass, like, I guess like a 15, 16-second threshold, if the fire does last that long. But the damage control party is updated, where the duration of the damage control party, they decreased it. So it used to be like always a minute, and then now it goes to 30 seconds. But they also decreased the cooldown time, where you can get your damage control party back up, 90 to 70 seconds. Now what I don't know, is it on the screen? Your damage control party, like here it's auto, so it'll always automatically like kick off, right? So these changes are designed to increase the strategic impact of fire when playing against or as a carrier. Now, I mean, I'm thankful that fires now last longer on carriers. I mean, I don't know if they needed to do all these things. I mean, it could have been literally just like, it's an aircraft carrier, give it the same fire duration as a battleship and call it good. You know, and now they're changing other characteristics, so I don't know how I feel about it. It just feels really weird, because the reason why I say it feels weird, it's like when wargaming is, they're buffing something, or let's say they're nerfing it. Yeah, this is what I say. They're nerfing it, but at the same time they're buffing it in a certain aspect, in a certain way. So this is a, you know, so this is a nerf. This could be viewed as a buff or a nerf, depending on how one wants to look at it. This is a nerf, this is the buff. So it's just kind of like, it's just moving different pieces on the puzzle board around. So I think collectively it's to weaken aircraft carriers. And it's like, why are you even focused on an aircraft carrier being involved in a sustained artillery engagement? It's not supposed to be, right? So I don't know if this is them thinking of how do we nerf carriers now that we've given them a secondary buff, and now they're addressing this. They're only addressing this because they added secondary manual battery control aircraft carriers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have touched this. Go figure. In my opinion, that's just my opinion. When an aircraft carrier is not supposed to partake in any type of artillery engagement, it's only supposed to be on the planes. So it's just this like favorite class in World Warships. Survivability improvements against aerial and acoustic torpedoes. Wait, homing torpedoes? Survivability mechanics for all ships are also receiving a notable adjustment, as the mechanics of damage application on airborne and acoustic torpedoes have been changed. Wait, so this is involving submarines now? Currently, a torpedo may deal damage in 2 different ways depending on the area it hits. How the damage application works now. 1, if it hits the bow, stern, or any other part of a ship that is not covered by torpedo protection armor, a significant part of the damage dealt can be healed back by the use of the repair party consumable. The exact percentage that can be healed back varies, but it is generally above 50%. 2, if a torpedo hits the torpedo protection armor, all damage that is ultimately dealt to the ship is considered damage to the citadel. In that case, a significant lesser portion of the damage dealt can be healed back. Once again, the exact value varies, but the average is around 10%. So that's why you have like some battleships, I think like Conqueror, other ships that they can heal back a lot of the Citadel damage. I think Minotaur might be an example of that as well. And other ships, you can't really heal back much Citadel damage on. So that's what they're referencing there. Starting with update 14.7, airborne and acoustic torpedoes will never be able to deal Citadel damage. If one of such torpedoes hits the torpedo belt of a ship, she will not only get the damage reduction provided by this armor, but also retain the same healing ability as if the torpedo would hit an unprotected part of the Citadel. Basically, ships damaged by acoustic and air torpedoes will now be able to restore the same percentage of HP lost regardless of where they hit, including the Citadel. This change is aimed at improving resilience against submarines and aircraft carriers. Moreover, this update emphasizes the lethality and risk of ship-launched torpedoes compared to more easily usable but less damaging acoustic and air torpedoes. Okay, so this is a buff for anything going up against ACV or a submarine. It's nerfing, so for like, let's say for example, for CV players, it takes away the reward of landing an accurately dropped torpedo strike on an enemy ship, because you're always trying to hit the center of the ship, right? Now they've kind of taken that away. As long as if it's a hit, it's a hit. So they've simplified the approach, I guess, in striking surface ships. Granted, you're always trying to go for, to get the best strike off. So it usually meant you're always trying to go for the broadside in that. And then also for submarines, I welcome it. It's really obnoxious when submarines can be, 3 kilometers away from you, periscope depth, dump a bunch of torpedoes into you, and you're like, what the heck just happened? I didn't know he was there. And they try to line up that strike on the side. So basically, it gives the repair party a little bit more resilience now, a little more meaning going up against aircraft carrier torpedoes and submarine acoustic torpedoes. Keep that in mind. They're not talking about, let's see, can I just do this? They're not talking about the other torpedo type. Or do you only get one type? Let's go Gato. Oops. So like on Gato, and whatever, I don't really care right now. You would get. So these are the acoustic torpedoes, or it says magnetic 10,000, and these are the non. So it doesn't take into account the non-homing torpedoes, if I understand this correctly. Sometimes it's always a little hard to tell in the midst of how they word things. So let's see. Yeah, they still call it magnetic. So basically, I think probably what this could do is it could push submarine players to more utilize the non-homing torpedoes. Which, I mean, historically speaking, so then they can't heal as much of your torpedo damage back, right? It makes it a little less meaningful to use the homing torpedoes on submarines now. So we might see more of these, but there's of course more of you're more gambling if it'll strike or not. Or if you'll land, right, when you're not using homing torpedoes, the acoustic torpedoes, so. Okay, well, we'll see how this ends up landing. If it ends up being meaningful changes. I think the only thing that really, kind of annoys me is a little bit about they didn't like that aircraft carriers weren't able to defend themselves when you had a destroyer run up on them, right? That was part of the reward. You fought through the flank, you tactfully outmaneuvered cruisers, destroyers, and battleships to get to the carrier, right? That's the common experience you had back in the day. You'd have the Shimakaze player who'd run the whole J10 and then go the whole A line over to strike the CV, right? And then that was really annoying because you lost that destroyer coverage for you as a cruiser or battleship. But if you broke through a flank, like let's say you collapsed a flank, right? You're a Marceau, you're a Clobert, and now you're going to be rushing a midway. Now you have to deal with this. Granted, in the same way, this is a pro tip, or veteran tip, whether you're playing, going up, you're a destroyer player and you're rushing a cruiser, battleship, or aircraft carrier, the secondary placement range is limited, right? So if you're gonna run up on a CV or a battleship, you want to try to do it from bow or stern on. I mean, preferably bow, because you can just rush at them much quicker versus them running away if you're approaching from the rear, because you don't have the full secondary battery that lines the whole side of a ship, right? So when we were looking at Midway, how many secondaries? You got 18 127 millimeter guns, right? So you've got 9 on each side. Where if you're going more, you're going more bow on, you avoid a lot of secondary damage. So that's kind of one of the ways to get around this, if you're able to approach the CV from a direction that favors you, where you don't have to eat the secondary battery damage if he ends up going for it, right? So, but again, you have to be detected, of course, for him to get off, unless you're really close. So he doesn't have much of a response time still, so. But it's kind of like, that was one of the words to me of catching a CV player off guard, and now it feels like they've kind of buffed CVs to help defend themselves better against that. So, I don't know. Maybe there's enough CV players complaining. I don't really know. So, yeah, we'll just have to see how this lands in this development blog, if this all takes place for going live onto the servers. Something needs to be changed. I mean, there's some things I like. I like that they removed the detectability penalty for firing, that they removed it when you're firing your main battery guns. You no longer increases your ship's aerial detectability. So they're addressing some of the spotting mechanics, but not, in my opinion, they're not addressing the main ones, right? When you just get lit up and a Shikishima decides to fire at you 22 kilometers away. That's what makes life insufferable, especially for cruisers now, if you're not playing more of a battle cruiser with more armor. So yeah, so that's gonna bring it to a close this development blog. Give me your thoughts on this development blog in the comments below. We can discuss it a little bit more. You can give me your thoughts and opinions. I'm still having my coffee this morning. So if you liked it, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you subscribe, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.